From birds and hair curlers and people hidden in cars to a billion-dollar bust at sea, these are the wildest and biggest smuggling cases ever. This vessel is called the MSC Gayane, a gigantic container ship longer than 2 football fields. But hidden beneath its steel decks is something that turns this into one of the most jaw-dropping busts in modern smuggling history. Beneath stacks of fruit bags and legitimate cargo, officers uncover something bundles wrapped tight, lined up in rows like bricks in a wall. Inside is a suspicious white powder, packed tightly in shrink wrap and plastic. It's not sugar. It's not flour. It's the type of powder people risk everything to smuggle. Over 39,000 pounds of it. Street value? Easily over $1 billion. That's billion, with a B. The ship had traveled from South America and was en route to Europe with a stop in the US. But this wasn't just a case of one rogue crew member. As investigations unfolded, authorities realized several crewmen were involved. They had loaded the packages mid-ocean, under the cover of night. Yes, this was an ocean heist. Only it wasn't stolen treasure. It was illegal cargo being delivered. Authorities needed cranes to haul it all out. The US Customs and Border Protection released photos that looked straight out of a crime drama. Mounds of tightly packed bundles stacked taller than grown men, all laid out like a bizarre exhibit. What made this bust even crazier is the logistics. This wasn't your average speedboat run. This was a full-scale commercial ship, operated by one of the biggest shipping companies in the world. And it had passed through multiple checkpoints before someone caught on. The bust was so massive that it made international headlines. For a brief moment, it even overshadowed celebrity gossip and political drama on primetime news. Even Narcos fans raised their eyebrows. This felt like a plotline too bold even for TV. What started as a quiet docking at a US port turned into the largest maritime bust in US history. And it all unraveled container by container, with agents doing the unthinkable, catching $1 billion haul hiding in plain sight. Forget spy movies, this is a real case, and it's weirder than fiction. A man was caught trying to sneak across the Hong Kong-Shenzhen border with 94 iPhones taped to his body. 94. He looked like a homemade robot. Layers of phones wrapped in plastic strapped to his chest, back, thighs, even around his calves. The Border Patrol got suspicious when they noticed he was walking like a stiff-legged mannequin. That, and the suspicious metallic clunking with every step. When they made him remove his coat, the truth unraveled like duct tape. China has heavy taxes on foreign tech, especially Apple devices. Smugglers try to bring in electronics from Hong Kong where prices are lower. Some try hiding them in cars or packages, but this guy went full DIY cyborg. And he's not alone. This has become a whole trend. Tech smuggling via body wrapping. In some busts, smugglers were caught with over 100 phones. That's a walking Best Buy with a pulse. Security scanners pick up the shapes and the body heat from the phones gives them away instantly. High risk, awkward walk, and a big fail. Some smugglers go for high tech, others, high-stakes surgery. At Madrid airport, security flagged a woman arriving from Colombia. She seemed nervous. Her story didn't add up. So officers ran a scan, and froze. Inside her body were 2 foreign shapes lodged under her skin. Breast implants, but not the usual kind. They were filled with a white paste, almost 4 pounds of it, packed inside and stitched into place before the flight. This wasn't a horror story. She was fine physically, but the risks were massive, not just legally, medically too. The implants weren't done in a hospital. They were makeshift jobs done fast and loose. This isn't even the only case. In several airports, customs have found people smuggling enhanced body parts, from fake bellies to padded hips. Airports now use thermal scanners and motion analysis to spot these odd body mods. Strange, desperate, and dangerously creative, this kind of smuggling shows how far some people will go to hide something where no one wants to look. Let's get straight to it. Some smugglers really do try to turn themselves into human safes. In one of the most bizarre trends in recent years, airports across India have been catching passengers trying to smuggle solid gold. Not in their suitcases, not in their shoes, but hidden inside their bodies. Specifically in places that aren't built to carry gold. We're talking about cylindrical gold biscuits tucked away internally. These aren't small coins either, some weigh close to 2 pounds each. Customs officials at multiple airports have found travelers walking awkwardly, sweating, or unable to sit properly after long flights. Suspicious enough for a pat-down, and in some cases, an X-ray reveals the glittering truth. In just one sting, authorities recovered dozens of these gold packets from a single flight. Some were wrapped in plastic, others covered in black material to fool scanners. But technology has caught up. Heat signatures, metal detectors, and even body language AI now help officers spot the weird walks and tense faces. Why go through all that? Because gold prices in India are sky high due to import taxes. Smuggling small amounts repeatedly can add up fast. In 1 year alone, officials seized hundreds of pounds of smuggled gold from passengers using this exact method. Painful? Yes. Risky? Extremely. Profitable? Apparently still worth it for some. It's a smuggling method that's as uncomfortable as it is unbelievably creative. A traveler at Bangkok's main airport was stopped at security after officers noticed something strange during a bag scan. They saw what looked like a stuffed toy curled up next to clothes in a suitcase, but something wasn't right. The object was too detailed, too lifelike. When officers opened the bag, they didn't find a toy. They found a live, 2-month-old Bengal tiger cub, drugged and drowsy, wrapped in soft towels, hidden among plush animals. That's not a metaphor. Someone was literally trying to carry a tiger onto a commercial flight as carry-on. The traveler claimed she had no idea what was in the bag, but customs officials weren't buying it. The tiger had been sedated, likely to keep it quiet for the duration of the flight. Thankfully, the cub survived and was taken to a wildlife rescue center where it recovered safely. But the case exposed a dark trend: baby exotic animals being trafficked in horrifyingly confined ways. Suitcases, plastic tubs, even boxes marked as snacks. Some are drugged, others are tied up. The motivation? High demand for rare pets in private collections. Tigers in particular are sold for tens of thousands on the black market. At first glance, the car looked like any other crossing the border. It had luggage, snacks, a GPS on the dash, nothing out of the ordinary. But something wasn't right. Border agents noticed the driver acting nervous and, more importantly, sweating heavily despite the AC being on. They pulled the car aside for a closer look. That's when they noticed the dashboard seemed off. It was bulkier than it should be. After removing a few screws, they uncovered a hidden compartment. Inside, curled up in complete darkness, was a person. Alive, conscious, but barely able to move or breathe. This isn't fiction. It's a real method used by smugglers, especially at border crossings between Mexico and the US. People, desperate to reach safety or a better life, are sometimes packed into dashboards, inside seatbacks, behind panels, and even under floorboards. In some cases, passengers were stuffed into custom-built compartments so small they couldn't straighten their legs. The air supply? Minimal. The risk? Enormous. But for some, it's the only shot they think they have. In one case, agents found a woman hidden beneath the front passenger seat. She had been inside for over 4 hours. Thankfully, she survived and was rescued on the spot. It's not just about crossing borders illegally, it's about human lives being reduced to cargo space. Many of these individuals are victims, not criminals, and their stories often remain untold. What makes this kind of smuggling especially tragic is that it's both desperate and dangerous, and happening more often than most people realize. Now this one's gonna make you blink twice. A man arriving at JFK Airport was walking normally, carrying nothing suspicious. But customs officers noticed the bottom of his coat looked bulkier than it should. They pulled him aside and started asking questions. He was polite, calm, maybe a little too calm. So, they checked his luggage. Nothing. Then they checked his coat. Inside, sewn into the lining, they found 35 tiny plastic hair curlers, each one containing a live songbird. That's not an exaggeration. Each bird was stuffed into a tube, wrapped in mesh, just big enough to keep it alive and quiet. Why? Not for food or science. These birds were destined for underground singing competitions in certain communities where males that sing well can fetch big money. Some people even place bets like it's a bird version of boxing. And a rare species? That can mean thousands in profit. The smuggler thought he'd outsmart the system by literally wearing the birds into the country, but one bird chirped, just once, and that was all it took for customs to catch on. Thankfully, all the birds were rescued and handed over to wildlife services. But the idea of someone walking through a major international airport with a choir of endangered birds hidden in hair curlers? It's almost cartoonish. Almost. Until you realize it's been done multiple times, and not everyone gets caught. Sweet on the outside, shiny on the inside. In several Indian airports, officials have discovered a bizarre smuggling method. Gold, carefully molded into flat, coin-shaped discs, wrapped in chocolate foil, and placed into boxes that looked like candy. The wrapping was so convincing that one customs officer initially thought he was looking at a snack gift, But the weight gave it away. Gold is heavy, heavier than chocolate by far. When they peeled back the wrappers, the truth gleamed right back at them. This wasn't just a one-time gimmick, it became a pattern. Boxes of chocolates arriving from overseas were flagged and searched, revealing layer after layer of foil-covered gold coins, disguised to fool scanners and customs agents. The smugglers were banking on the fact that sweets don't usually raise red flags at security, especially in gift season. Some even added fake cocoa scents to throw off sniffer dogs. Creative? Absolutely. Successful? Not for long. In one of the biggest hauls, agents seized over 20 pounds of gold, packed into chocolate-style trays. And while gold isn't illegal, smuggling it to dodge taxes definitely is. What made this method stand out wasn't the value. It was the sheer absurdity. It looked like a kid's birthday gift, but inside was enough precious metal to buy a car. Who needs candy when your chocolate bars are worth thousands? At Bali's airport, customs officers scanned what looked like an ordinary black suitcase, a few clothes, some toiletries, and something else, something breathing. When they opened the case, they didn't find contraband. They found a live, drugged orangutan, about 2 years old, curled up like a toddler in a makeshift bed. The man who owned the bag? A tourist. He claimed he bought the orangutan for a few $1,000s at a local market and planned to raise it as a pet back home. Yes, he thought it would be fine to check an endangered great ape as luggage. Officials acted quickly. The baby orangutan was sedated with allergy medicine but thankfully survived and was handed over to wildlife protection. This wasn't a one-off either. Southeast Asia sees frequent attempts to smuggle exotic animals, often disguised as toys or packed into luggage compartments with tiny air holes. What makes this one stand out is the boldness. A wild animal the size of a toddler packed in a suitcase with barely any air. The good news? The orangutan made a full recovery and now lives in a protected sanctuary. The smuggler? Not so lucky. But really, who looks at a wild ape and thinks, carry on? This one is layers deep, literally. In a shipment of vegetables arriving at a US border checkpoint from Mexico, officers noticed something odd about the onions. Some had strange weight differences. Others didn't feel quite right. When they peeled back the outer skins, they found the truth-fake onions, designed to look real, but filled with a crystal-like substance. There were over 1,000 of them, packed neatly into crates, each one carved out, hollowed, and refilled. The outside was made from onion skins glued onto white plastic spheres. Even up close, they looked real, complete with a bit of onion scent added to keep the illusion alive. But these weren't for cooking. They were part of a high-value shipment of ice hidden in produce containers to pass through food inspection points. The smugglers had spent hours crafting each fake onion. Some were flawless, but the total shipment was too big to go unnoticed. The bust made headlines mostly because of how ridiculous it looked. Crates of produce with fake onions stacked next to real ones, all harboring something way more dangerous than bad breath. Authorities credited detection dogs and alert inspectors for spotting the deception. This one sounds like a cartoon caper, but it's 100% real. Over the course of several months, thieves in Canada pulled off one of the biggest food heists in history, stealing more than 3,000 tons of maple syrup from a strategic reserve in Quebec. Yes, Canada has a syrup reserve, and yes, someone figured out how to siphon off over $18 million worth of liquid gold without getting caught right away. They did it by renting a warehouse next to the storage facility, slowly replacing full syrup barrels with water-filled ones. The real syrup was transported out in trucks, sold on the black market, and sometimes even exported. It was smooth, quiet, and shockingly effective. The reserve wasn't checking every barrel. Why would they? Who steals syrup? Eventually, a worker inspecting the barrels knocked one over and realized it was too light. That cracked open the case. It took years to investigate and bring people to court. In the end, dozens of barrels were recovered, but not all. Some of the stolen syrup is still unaccounted for. To this day, it's called the Great Canadian Syrup Heist, and honestly, it sounds like a subplot from Breaking Bad, if Breaking Bad was about pancakes. You open a box of sweets and, surprise, it's not chocolate, it's a baby crocodile. That's what happened when customs agents in Egypt opened a shipment of what was labeled as confectionery headed out of the country. Inside were tiny Nile crocodiles, still alive, wrapped in wet cloth and packed into what looked like candy boxes. The reptiles were dehydrated and frightened, but they made it out safely, thanks to the quick reaction of airport staff. It turned out to be part of a broader smuggling network that trafficked exotic animals using ordinary packaging. Crocodiles are illegal to export without a permit. And trying to sneak them out disguised as candy is not just illegal, it's wildly reckless. The smugglers figured most candy boxes wouldn't be closely examined, but something about the shipment raised suspicion, possibly the strange smell, or maybe it was the slight movement inside the box that tipped them off. Luckily, all the animals were rescued and transferred to a wildlife care center. Sadly, this isn't rare. Officials in many countries have found snakes in Pringle cans, turtles in socks, and birds in shampoo bottles. But crocodiles in candy boxes? That's a new one. Makes you look twice at that snack delivery, doesn't it? In shipping yards across Southeast Asia and Africa, inspectors have gotten used to seeing odd cargo labels. But one container marked as recyclable plastic waste caught someone's eye. It was too clean, too heavy, and when customs opened it up, they didn't find bottles or wrappers. They found tons of elephant tusks, carefully hidden under layers of shredded plastic and resin. The tusks were long, curved, and polished, clearly prepared for black market trade. This method of hiding ivory in containers disguised as garbage has become a go-to trick for wildlife smugglers. The idea is simple: use the dirtiest, least interesting label possible to avoid inspections. No one wants to dig through plastic trash, but organized wildlife units are now trained to look for inconsistencies, like weight that doesn't match the declared contents. In this particular case, over 2 tons of ivory were recovered. That's the remains of dozens of endangered elephants. Smugglers go to incredible lengths, cutting tusks into sections, covering them in wax, even coating them in molten plastic to avoid detection by sniffer dogs. But international pressure has made ports crack down. Teams now scan waste containers more thoroughly than ever. When the truth is hidden under layers of trash, you really have to dig to find it. And in this case, they did, saving a fortune in black market ivory from disappearing into secret markets. It started as a routine customs check at Bangkok's airport. A woman's suitcase looked unusually heavy for its size. Security agents flagged it and scanned it, expecting maybe electronics or undeclared items. But what they saw made jaws drop. Inside, packed tightly in small mesh bags, were hundreds of baby tortoises, their shells barely larger than bottle caps. Many of them were endangered species, particularly radiated tortoises, highly sought after in the exotic pet trade. These weren't being smuggled in luxury cases or custom setups, just stuffed into luggage like dirty laundry, crammed together with no food or water. Miraculously, most of them were still alive. Customs officers acted fast, handing the animals over to a wildlife rescue team who managed to stabilize and care for them. What makes this case so wild is the sheer volume. Over 1,000 tortoises in a single suitcase. That's not smuggling. That's a suitcase-sized zoo. Why so many? Because exotic tortoises can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars each. And when it comes to black market pets, rare means valuable. But it also means fragile. Most of these animals would never survive a long flight in those conditions. Luckily, this time the story ended well, with the smugglers caught and the tortoises rehomed safely. Fruit crates are a smuggler's favorite, especially pineapples. They're big, spiky, and filled with fibrous pulp that can hide just about anything. In a port in Spain, authorities cracked open a shipment of what looked like ordinary pineapples. But some were heavier than the others. When they cut into them, they found hand-carved cavities filled with a soft white paste. These weren't fruits. They were hollowed-out containers, stuffed with illegal powder and sealed to look fresh. The smugglers had gone to extreme lengths. Each pineapple had been sliced, hollowed, filled, and then glued shut with food-safe adhesive. From the outside, you couldn't tell the difference. The operation was part of a larger trend in which fruits like papayas, bananas, and even avocados have been used to move powder across borders. Food shipments often get less scrutiny, and the smell of produce helps throw off detection dogs. Still, the method isn't foolproof. Customs officers now inspect fruit shipments with X-rays and metal probes. The fake pineapples in this case were too perfect. All the same size, all stacked the same way. Suspicion led to discovery, and the entire shipment was seized. It's one of the more creative methods out there. Tropical on the outside, criminal on the inside. Smuggling doesn't just happen on land or sea anymore. In recent years, traffickers have turned to drones. Small, fast, and nearly silent. On the US-Mexico border, patrol agents have caught quadcopters flying at night, carrying bundles no larger than a lunchbox. Inside, not sandwiches, but powder-filled packets wrapped in heat-resistant foil and dropped with pinpoint accuracy. These aren't hobby drones. Many are modified for long-range flights with extended batteries and stronger motors. Some even have GPS pre-programmed to drop their cargo in quiet fields, rooftops, or alleyways. In one case, a drone dropped 6 pounds of powder into a park just outside San Diego. It was recovered only because it crashed into a tree. Authorities are now fighting back with radar, drone jammers, and night patrols. But the trend is rising. Drone smuggling is fast, low risk, and nearly invisible. No driver, no vehicle, no paper trail, and the tech keeps getting better. Some drones are equipped with cameras, signal scramblers, and even camouflage coatings. It sounds like something from a spy movie, but it's happening right now, just above our heads. In the sky, crime flies quieter than ever. At one European border, customs officers were inspecting what looked like an ordinary shipment of construction materials. Bags of cement, pallets of bricks. Everything checked out. Until a single pallet tipped slightly too easily. Hidden inside the bricks, cigarettes, thousands of packs, perfectly stacked, vacuum sealed, and surrounded by real cement to mask the scent and weight. Smugglers had literally built fake bricks, using real materials on the outside and hollow spaces on the inside. This wasn't a one-time trick. Authorities uncovered multiple shipments like this, some with cigarettes worth over $500,000, dodging huge taxes. Europe's black market tobacco trade is booming, and smugglers have gotten creative, hiding cigarettes and furniture inside rolls of steel, even inside hollowed-out tombstones. But cement bricks? That takes patience, precision, and a twisted kind of genius. The bust went viral, especially after customs released images of bricks being cracked open like piñatas, revealing neat rows of smokes instead of mortar. It was a perfect mix of comedy and crime. The lesson? If your cement's too light, maybe don't light it at all. That's about it. Which case surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments. For more useful information, watch other videos.